Excuse me. Excuse me, Bowser. You gotta move. You gotta go. Gotta get that down there. Sometimes I say to the Switch 2, baby, it's cold outside. And the Switch 2 says back to me, I won't be here till it's warm outside. And I say, shoot. But thankfully, there is a huge rumored direct planning for February, like Nintendo always does. And we should expect them to continue the pattern as their beloved new console isn't really existing yet. Like, it exists, but we don't know hardly anything about it. We won't until April. So that's why next month's Direct gets a new huge leak about a beloved franchise that will be the last big Switch 1 game. So good morning, Mario, and good morning, Switch fans. Also, good morning, Bowser. He's now right here. I don't know if you can see it. You can't see him. Pop up, say hello to the people, and goodbye to the people. But we got to talk about and figure out what this game is, as well as go over the specific rumors. Also, check out this sick Switch 2. This is an inverted Switch 2, if indeed they went with a white color scheme. And I think as the Switch 2 progresses, obviously we could get things like this. Hopefully they end up making some pretty crazy cool color schemes. I just love looking at these mock-ups of different colors, different options, and ways that they can interweave the old, very bombastic neon designs with sort of these new, more subtle, high-end designs. So what's going on, everybody? It's Zach from SwitchForce. Direct coming in February. You probably should expect it. A lot of people didn't know if Nintendo would release the Switch 2 early in the year, Q1, in which case maybe a February Direct was not needed, not necessary. But now that we know the Switch 2 is going to be coming sometime after April 2nd, and most likely in June, that gives Nintendo 5 months. It's a lot of time, and it's not going to be sufficient to just have Xenoblade Chronicles X. I doubt Donkey Kong Country Returns sold many, especially at full price. Great game, don't get me wrong. Not as good as Tropical Freeze. Not worth full price when they didn't really add much. And in fact, I've seen some bugs that weren't present in the first original version, which is just blasphemous. Anyways, Nintendo needs to announce new stuff, and PH Brazil, a leaker that we know and trust, has said that there is going to be a Direct in February. Now, Nate Drake is backing him up, saying, yep, there's going to be a Direct in February. And Brazil says he's not sure if it's a partner or a general, but he believes it to be a general. Now, that's very interesting to me, but I can see Nintendo wanting to end on their own note. Even if they don't have a ton of games, like this is sort of the swan song Direct for the Nintendo Switch, and let them lead that Direct. A partner showcase is a far weaker affair, and it emphasizes the third parties as opposed to emphasizing Nintendo. But what's really cool here is that PH Brazil confirms there's one more big Switch game. One more big one. We've had so many big Switch games through the year, from the Zeldas to the Marios to the Mario Sports, to the Splatoons, to the Fire Emblems, so many big games. But this one, he says, comes from a niche but beloved franchise, and right away, we got to clarify what that means. Now, I'm not PH Brazil, I get it, but niche but beloved eliminates so many options, all right? Niche eliminates things like Fire Emblem. Niche eliminates things like Zelda, even 2D. Niche eliminates things like the Mario Sports games. Those are not niche as far as I understand the word niche. This means it is something that fits into a small genre pocket and is not going to probably sell millions of units, but maybe it can because they're bringing back a beloved franchise, and it's confirmed to not be a remaster. So what is a niche but beloved franchise? People have suggested things like Rhythm Heaven or Golden Sun. I think those are niche. I think they're liked, maybe even cult classics. I wouldn't say beloved. To me, for it to be a beloved game, it needs to be a notable Nintendo character. It needs to be somebody that does show up in games like Mario Kart and Smash Bros, or at least shows up enough to be heavily recognized. That means it can't be any of these smaller titles, and no, it's not ARMS 2. I really don't believe it's going to be anything on the super high end of the seller or the super low end of the seller. I think it's going to fly right in between. And to me, F-Zero would be a great guess. I don't know that F-Zero is beloved, and I don't know that I'd consider F-Zero a big Switch game, especially now that we know Mario Kart 9 is probably the big launch game for Nintendo Switch 2. Are they really going to want to put a racer right before a racer? I say nada. So what does that leave us with? And to me, there are two possibilities, and I think either of them are very valid. I don't really know that we should look beyond this, but maybe I'm crazy. My two games I'm talking about are either Kid Icarus or Star Fox. Now, you could argue that Kid Icarus is beloved. You could argue that Star Fox is niche. But given that Star Fox has kind of walked himself out of the AAA conversation and the big Nintendo franchise conversation with his recent entries, or lack of recent entries, I think he fits the bill. Kid Icarus, on the other hand, doesn't really scream beloved, but because that 3DS game was so liked, and because Pit has featured prominently in Super Smash Bros., I think it could be sufficient, especially since we know that Nintendo is interested and Sakurai is interested in Kid Icarus and maybe bringing that back. Although many of the rumors about Kid Icarus were they were going to remake the 3DS game for Nintendo Switch. And there's also a heavy rumor that Next Direct will include a Kirby Planet Robobot game, but that's a remake and that takes Kirby out of the equation. Also, I don't really think Kirby qualifies as niche, as he's a very big all ages seller for Nintendo. What else is beloved but niche that could still qualify as a big Switch game? I don't think it can be anything that's like a strange non-character type title. And that's where I rule out things like Rhythm Heaven. We've already got things like WarioWare. And again, beloved implies that these are really, really superstar liked. Pikmin already got a title. Pokemon Snap, everything has already seemed to get a release, and therefore it's like, what has Nintendo not put out, and what would qualify as like a big Switch game within the understanding that this is the end of the Switch and they need to save their major hype for their upcoming big titles. Can you think of anything else that qualifies within this category? I don't think it can be a really new franchise, and I don't think it can be a super old franchise, because Brazil's wording implies that this is currently beloved, not beloved 20 years ago. So something like Punch-Out, I think, probably doesn't fit. Also, we've heard that Nintendo isn't really interested in developing Punch-Out anymore anyways. A lot of people have suggested the Fire Emblem remake that's been heavily teased for years, but I don't think Fire Emblem counts as niche. Does it count as niche when it's sold as many copies as Three Houses sold? I don't think so. I mean, maybe, again, me and Brazil's definition is different, but Fire Emblem is a pretty prominent title that got a lot of love on Nintendo Switch, and that Nintendo valued very highly in terms of how it ranked amongst the other characters they have on their roster. People have also suggested smaller things like Etrian Odyssey or like Earthbound, and to me, those are pretty small. I mean, Earthbound would be beloved and niche, I guess, but I don't think Nintendo is going to go that route for a major Switch game, although it's one I will earmark as a weird possibility just because that seems like something Nintendo could strangely do. Pokemon is in no way niche, even if you wanted to go the Troy Zay route. Some people are saying Chibi Robo. Is Chibi Robo beloved? Or again, is that just kind of like a cult favorite, cult classic? We might be battling with the semantics of words here, but to me, it's Star Fox, Kid Icarus, and I'm probably leaning towards Star Fox. I think it's very bizarre that Star Fox has not really shown up at all here outside of another company's game. If you recall, Star Fox did make an appearance for Ubisoft, even though he didn't make an appearance for Nintendo, which feels absolutely bizarre. So that's going to be my pick, is Star Fox. But if it was Kid Icarus, I wouldn't be surprised. F-Zero would surprise me more, given that we know a Nintendo Racer is coming quite soon. Fire Emblem is not niche in my opinion, so I don't really know how that would qualify, but I could see it being that game. Maybe Brazil's a little bit off in how he's describing this, but that would honestly bum me out. I don't think we need another Fire Emblem. I think it's high time another character gets some love, and like DK would be a perfect final swan song big game, but they just released Donkey Kong Country Returns, and yes, I'm going to call it that because it's a double whammy of DK Returns for no reason at full price. I don't think that game needs to exist when they could have just made a brand new Donkey Kong, but hopefully that's saved for early years of Switch 2. What do you think this game is? One more big game. But besides one more big game, I do think Nintendo will announce a number of other Switch titles. They could be smaller, and maybe even some of the games we've already discussed today. There could also be more remasters and more ports, and that's probably the thing that's more likely. Kirby Planet Robobot seems like a shoe-in, and then maybe Kid Icarus is one of those remasters. Nintendo can continue to elongate the Switch's sales right now, even as we wait for Switch 2, by releasing these games that are basically done and they just need to port over. I think it would be really neat if there was one more cool Mario game for the Switch, even a sports title like the much anticipated It Never Arrived Mario Baseball, because it sounds like Mario 3D is being saved for the holidays for Nintendo Switch 2. Some even say into next year. So we have a gap in space where they could release a Mario sports title, say in April or May, and still have plenty of time before Mario 3D this holiday season. Though if they're going to drop Mario Kart, they probably don't want a Mario multiplayer title. And therefore, even though this is the 40th anniversary of Mario, maybe the Mario antics are going to be saved for the second half of the year and beyond. That's kind of what they did with the 35th anniversary. They started it a bit late in the year, and then they just extended it into the following calendar, and I feel like that's what they're going to do, a carryover into 2026 for Mario Kart 9, for Mario 3D next version in the holidays, and then probably something else next year in February or March. So what can Nintendo do to wow us here? Maybe nothing. A Switch Direct in February, a final Direct when the new console's already announced, isn't really set up to wow us. But I still think there'll be fun things to play, and hopefully this niche but beloved franchise from PH Brazil turns out to be something that we're all into, and not something that's like a dud. Nonetheless, if it's a new game in a beloved franchise, I think that's pretty cool, and will continue to add to Nintendo's awesome arsenal that they've already established with the Switch 1, and hey, you can probably play it with a little bit better performance on Switch 2. So let me know, what do you think this game is? Are you getting excited for a Direct in February? Because that's a few weeks away instead of the April Direct, which is still almost 3 months away. In the meantime, everybody, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, stay positive out there. Thanks so much for watching. SwitchForce, out.